Welcome to the silent personalities. When Cnut the Great died in 1035, England did not inherit stability, but uncertainty. An empire that stretched across the North Sea was suddenly held together by memory, rather than authority, and the question of who should rule was no longer answered by blood alone. With the rightful heir absent, rival claims competing, and powerful nobles seeking order over legitimacy, England entered a moment where presence mattered more than law. From this fragile political vacuum emerged Harold Harefoot, a king shaped not by destiny or conquest, but by necessity, timing, and the dangerous reality that in medieval England, an empty throne could be as destructive as a foreign invasion. In the middle decades of the 11th century, England was still adjusting to life under a ruling house that was not purely English in origin. Cnut, remembered as the Great, had created a North Sea empire linking England, Denmark, and Norway. His authority rested on military power, negotiated loyalty, and a careful balance among powerful regional earls. When he died in 1035, that balance collapsed. There was no smooth transfer of power, only a tense and uncertain struggle in which several claimants, each backed by different interests, competed to control England. It was within this unstable political landscape that Harold, later known by the nickname Harefoot, rose to kingship. Harold was the son of Cnut and Ælfgifu of Northampton. His parentage mattered deeply because Cnut had another son, Harthacnut, born to Queen Emma of Normandy. Emma herself was an exceptionally influential figure. She had first been queen to the English king, Ætheling II, and then, after the Danish conquest, queen to Cnut. Through her, Harthacnut was connected not only to Cnut's empire, but also to the older royal line of Wessex, and to the powerful Duchy of Normandy. Harold and Harthacnut therefore represented different political coalitions. Harold was closely associated with the Danish elite and with northern England, while Harthacnut's support lay more strongly in southern England. And among those loyal to Emma, Cnut's empire created a practical problem at his death. Harthacnut became king of Denmark, but his position there was insecure, and he could not immediately travel to England. England, however, could not remain without an active ruler. The leading men of the kingdom, faced with the absence of Harthacnut, accepted Harold as regent. This arrangement was meant to be temporary, but it placed real power in Harold's hands. He could issue commands, distribute patronage, and present himself as the only royal authority physically present in the realm. Control of resources quickly became decisive. Emma, acting in support of Harthacnut, held considerable wealth and influence, particularly in Wessex. Harold moved to secure access to the royal treasury and to limit Emma's ability to act independently. England effectively became divided in loyalty. Some regions acknowledged Harold's authority, while others remained attached to Harthacnut's claim. This division was unstable, but it favored Harold, because day-to-day governance depended on presence rather than distant legitimacy. Medieval kingship relied not only on power, but also on ritual, especially coronation. Accounts written in Emma's interest, particularly the Encomium Emmae Reginae, describe resistance from Archbishop Ætheling of Canterbury when Harold sought consecration as king. According to this source, the archbishop refused to crown him while Emma's sons were still alive. Although this text is openly partisan, its emphasis on coronation highlights a real issue. Harold's authority was questioned, and his legitimacy was not universally accepted. Even so, effective rule did not depend entirely on ceremonial approval. Harold continued to govern, and over time his position strengthened. Another danger to Harold came from Emma's sons by her first marriage to Ethelred II, Edward and Alfred. These princes represented the older English royal line that had ruled before the Danish conquest. In 1036, Alfred attempted to return to England. He was captured, blinded, and soon died from his injuries. Responsibility for this act has long been debated. Some sources accuse Harold directly, while others place the blame on Earl Godwin of Wessex, whose men carried out the seizure. What is certain is that Alfred's death removed a significant rival claimant and sent a clear warning to others who might challenge the existing power structure. By 1037, Harold's position had become dominant, with Harthacnut still absent and with alternative claimants eliminated or driven away. Harold was recognized as king throughout England, not merely as regent. Emma herself was forced into exile and fled to Flanders. Harold's rise was not marked by a single dramatic event, but by a sequence of political moves that gradually narrowed the choices available to England's elite. Accepting Harold became the most practical way to preserve stability. Harold's reign was short, and the surviving sources say relatively little about his policies as king. Much of what is known focuses on the struggle for power rather than on administration. Nevertheless, England continued to function under his rule. Royal authority was exercised, justice administered, and coinage struck in his name. These practical signs of governance show that Harold was more than a placeholder. He was, in reality, king. Meanwhile, events across the sea were shifting again. By 1039, Harthacnut, supported by Emma, was preparing to assert his claim. Plans were made for a return to England, possibly backed by force. Yet timing proved crucial. Harold's health was failing, and before any confrontation could take place, he died at Oxford on the 17th of March 1040. His death abruptly ended the conflict and cleared the way for Harthacnut's succession. What followed demonstrated how deeply contested Harold's kingship had been. When Harthacnut became king, he ordered Harold's body to be exhumed from Westminster, publicly mutilated and discarded. This act was a political statement as much as a personal one. By punishing Harold after death, Harthacnut's regime sought to deny the legitimacy of Harold's rule and to symbolically erase him from the line of rightful kings. Later tradition holds that Harold's remains were eventually recovered and reburied, possibly at St. Clement Danes in London. Harold Harefoot's reputation has always been shaped by hostile sources. Much of what survives was written by those who benefited from his fall, particularly supporters of Emma and her sons. As a result, he is often portrayed as an usurper or a cruel figure associated with violence and illegitimacy. Yet a more careful reading shows a ruler shaped by circumstance. Harold emerged because England needed a king who was present, capable of commanding loyalty, and able to govern in a moment of uncertainty. His reign illustrates how power in early medieval England depended less on abstract legal right and more on effective control, alliances, and timing. Although Harold ruled for only a few years, his significance lies in his position within a broader transition. His reign marked the end of Cnut's carefully balanced empire